Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Cynthia Toolin-Wilson, and I'm on my show, Author to Author. Tonight, my guest is Patricia Hershwitzky, and she has written a very interesting book called Teaching the City of God and the City of Man. How are you today, Patricia?
I'm doing very well, very at peace, and looking forward to discussing this with you and for the future of Catholic teaching. Doing well. Thank you.
So what is it that led you to write this book?
Been in education for almost 35 years. I came out of public relations and advertising. Felt drawn to teach in a Catholic school, and that's a whole story in itself. But as things progressed over the last several decades, and I had been away from the church and I returned, I did notice a deterioration in authentic Catholic teaching in schools. A lot of it was due to attrition. Had some wonderful educators, teachers, but I think over the last 3 generations at least, it's just the faith has been distorted, eroded, and even attacked in a sense, more and more. Sometimes there are people with very good intentions, but at risk to our young people. So, and I started to see this seep in even into textbooks and curriculums, even up to the archdiocesan levels of objectives, because frequently on the archdiocesan level, they will bring together a cohort of teachers to help develop curriculum every few years. They'll kind of rotate the subject area. And they come in and they infuse their own ideas or what they think the students should learn, which is all fine and good. But oftentimes, because of these other factors, what comes out is not a real clear idea of the integration of Catholicism in education. I notice this most in a most pronounced way in social what they call social studies, which I really don't like that lumped umbrella. I like history, government, civics, and so forth. But the textbook that came out, and one that I used in substitute teaching in my last teaching position, was somewhat soft on Islam, the spread of Islam, the history of it. And when going into, and some of this can even be buried in notes that you have to click on and get into. A little bit more critical, the Crusades. So there was this imbalance as far as the presenting the facts of certain historic events and so forth, or an overemphasis on prehistoric man, rather than maybe other areas of church history and so forth. So it was a number of factors like this. The concern that mostly, and this book is really written as a primer, and it's developed to be sectional, so that unit courses can be derived from them, build up for a master's in Catholic teachers. That's where Teaching the City of God is kind of a master's program type of title, to equip teachers as well, ones that really want to seek the truth, but they may not even know where to look, or that they're not grasping the truth. It has its different areas that I touch on that hopefully will lead them to other sources and so forth, and help them to become really solid Catholic teachers. That's where it all came from.
Right. That's a pretty interesting story. I haven't seen that where I teach, but I was teaching in a seminary, I left there at the end of September because my husband was sick and he did die. So I had left there, and I do teach for one Catholic school now, but it's at the graduate school level.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't pick up on what's going on in the younger generation, which is so important. Because if they don't get it right when they're little, they're going to keep that their whole lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That foundation. And what I was fortunate, like as I mentioned to, I alluded to, I had left the church for a while. Mm-hmm. But my early formation was K through fifth was pretty much the crux of my Catholic schooling. But I had a foundation, and as dry as it may sound, and it's been criticized as being, fundamentalist, if you will, the Baltimore Catechism. Sure. The very basics of who we are, why we were created, for whom we were created. I had that to come back to.
Yes. Exactly.
Whereas a lot of Catholics, even in my family, that went to schooling in the latter 60s, maybe, or later, they left the church. But what do they come back to? They don't necessarily.
They don't have anything.
Jesus loves you, and but they don't even know who Jesus is. They weren't taught. And again, I'm not saying it was by persons with any ill intent, but sometimes they were not well educated in the faith. And that has been happening now generationally, to the point now we have teachers, we have administrators, even at the graduate level, teachers that may not have the fullness of the faith, or they have gaps in it, or they have misunderstandings and they're not even aware they do.
I was very fortunate. I was born in 1950, and I converted to Catholicism in 1989 because of a religious experience. And I happened to hit upon a good priest. So this priest, Father Smolenski, who is now, he's now a hermit somewhere in Virginia, he was strong in the faith. He knew the faith inside and out. And he taught it to me. And, I often wonder what would have happened if I'd gone to someone who was wishy-washy, so it's funny how that works. You're helping the young. But when I got through, Father Smolenski said, you should go on because you're more interested than most people. So I went on and got a 90-credit master's in theology and an STL, and both places were fully traditional and Orthodox. So I feel like, I talk to some people who are Catholic and they think they're good Catholics, and it's like, something missing here. Down a quart.
Exactly.
Down a quart.
Yeah, and it's not, like I said, it's not malicious, it's not deliberate.
No, not at all.
You have that kind of hardcore within certain parishes, but for the most part, it's, for lack of, and I don't mean to sound, because I've had my own missteps, it's ignorance. They don't know.
Yeah.
They just don't know. Or in the case of what we're even seeing in the church today with some, not all Jesuits, of course, I always loved Father John Hardin, and I was under the tutelage of Father O'Gara, who was very pro-life and so forth in California. But you do have that branch, if you will. And so talking, for instance, with one person who happened to be a teacher there, the Jesuits say, I know Jesuit priests very well, and he says, this is just fine, this had to do with same sex. And what are you going to do? I'm not a priest. I'm not a Jesuit. So I'm looked at like the fundamentalist laity, if you will. But I have this priest that's telling me I'm in good shape. And so that you get that too. And you don't want to be on the attack about it, but how do you gently move people? And sometimes they just will not be moved, and there's nothing you can do about it. But it does start. And that was the other thing too. And it's very interesting because this actually came out of the classroom. which is another reason why I think teachers would benefit by a program or in a book and a primer to help them, is that the students themselves can get confused coming from their parents and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They come in there, and especially because I taught middle school my entire education. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to skip purgatory. I think.
You should.
I should. But they come in and they're very sharp and they're thinking, but they're also filled with this incredible, almost hyperbolic compassion or empathy. And so they come in with the passion and the emotion, but they don't necessarily know the truth. So, but if they started young, or if they had strong teachers around them, and especially in middle school where they may go from teacher to teacher, you have a good team that kind of supports each other, and they're not contradicting each other. That gives them that safety zone to start rethinking things. So yeah, that's the other in all of this.
Yeah. Well, certainly a great deal of this isn't, just where the church may not do the best job possible. It's also, and I'm not saying that in a critical way. I mean, we all don't always hit, the home run. But I think also the culture that we live in is so overpowering, especially with the mass media. And when I was young, we had TV. I'm 72. I'm going to be 73 in a few days. And so, when I watched television, it was things like Howdy Doody, and I remember when Kennedy was running and people were terrified because he was going to turn the country over to the Pope.
Yeah, the Pope's coming. Yeah.
The Pope wants to run the United States.
Yeah.
Who would come up with that?
I have no idea. If I was a Pope, I'd want to run, but that's a whole. Yeah, that's right.
But of course, at that point, we all believed it because we weren't Catholic. But the culture is so overpowering, and the mass media and the computer. I mean, no matter, even if you just turn on your computer and you get a news feed, you never know what's going to come up.
You don't, and to be candid, that is a whole nother realm.
Yeah.
And, the only way to use technology is to also teach teachers how to explore things beyond TikTok or CNN or whatever, or even beyond Fox. I mean, I'm not. There's one section I go into researching in a reliable way, and I encourage that to build those research skills, even in terms of they're just not getting messages pushed on them, that they become inquiring minds themselves. And
well, I do think that there is, to some extent, I'm not going to say a conspiracy because that's crazy, but I do think that there is control of the media going in a certain direction. So I was watching the television with the Roe v. Wade, I couldn't believe it happened. I mean, it was like the whole Supreme Court is actually on the same page. How can this happen? And I mean, I was ecstatic. And there was a young girl who was not young, like 18 or something, but, maybe in her 20s. And she was like hysterically upset. They're taking our rights away from us. They're trying to control women's bodies. It's a real difference between trying to control a woman's body and save a life. But that's beside the point, I guess. Anyway, so one of the justices was out there. He was a man, and I don't remember his name. And she said, what is the difference? There's nothing there yet, or something to that effect. And he said, the difference is that another person is involved. And I thought, wow, it was like I could hear angels singing. That there's another person involved. But you know what? I never saw it again on TV. It was just that one time that it was live. They probably got rid of the tape.
Yeah. And I don't believe conspiracy per se, but I do believe there's a number of people in power.
Yeah.
That do conspire to keep certain things off the airwaves and push other things.
Yes, because if those things hit the airwaves, like a Supreme Court justice saying because another life is involved, another person is involved.
But you go back to even, again, that early teaching and across subjects. I think it's our Sunday Visitor. It's someone with a doctor, someone who just wrote a book. I think it's fairly new, Teaching for Eternity. And this is kind of somewhat the foundation of this book, is that if you go to even the fundamental idea of whose body is it?
Yeah.
That our children growing up today, especially with the transgender and a few other things, you'd almost think that, they look at their body almost like a room they can remodel, or a car or something. They don't even understand or have the self-respect or dignity to realize this is your creator endowed you with this body, and you also have a soul, that it's not yours, but it was gifted to you to use in freedom to pursue the good, beautiful, and an eternal relationship with your creator. They're not, they don't have that imparted to them.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think it's one of the saddest, most tragic turns of events in all of history, is that they don't even see their body as something beautiful. Even if it's a little different from someone else's. And that's our fault if we are ridiculing or bullying or whatever, whatever they want to use the term. That's our fault if we're doing that. But everybody is beautiful.
Yeah.
Every single one. And our children are not taught that from the young age. Society says this is wrong with you, or that, or are you sure you're this or that, and we can fix it or we can change it. And I think that's one of the tragedies of our age, is that, and then they get more self-absorbed. It's also a form of self-absorption, Focus on yourself. What is going to make you happy? What is going to, and so when you try to tell them that there's another person in their womb, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They can't accept it. I think on some level they know it, but it's not surfacing to the consciousness that is, and that's why a lot of women who, and we know, because I've been in the pro-life movement now for decades, they turn to alcohol or promiscuity or, involving relationships, repetitive, different partners and so forth. There's something that they know.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you haven't read my book. Very few people have. I wrote this book, sir.
Is it your memoir?
Yeah.
I want to get a copy. I did see something on that, and I do want a copy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the truth of the matter is, there's just no way of getting around it. My mother didn't want a child. And, so she tried to chemically abort me. And it was my grandfather, who I had loved, her father, who went to the drugstore to get the drug. And, so that had some long-term effects on me, including 2 surgeries for facial reconstruction. I should have gone for a better look on the second one. Just kidding.
I don't know what look you were going for, but okay.
But so abortion is a major issue to me. It isn't just, it's beyond pro-life. I'm concerned, obviously I'm pro-life. But when I think of abortion and I think of birth control, I think of the wastage, the absolute waste of humans. Because somebody doesn't want to go through labor, or somebody doesn't want to have to not be able to do everything that they want to do. And they're actually, if you were walking down the street and you said, this guy in front of me is making me walk too slow, so I'm going to kill him. That's basically what's happening. It's like, I'm not going to have to change my way. I want to do everything, I have my life planned out. There's no room for another human. So you kill it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just amazing that we have gotten to this point as a country.
Not only have we gotten to this point as a country, but when you even see these so-called, and this is another thing too, because I think obviously women are beautiful and they're very capable, and I've always felt that women, I don't know, good thing that Dr. Sebastian's not listening in. I think women are far more powerful than men. God created them that way. And they surrendered that. They gave it up. And I could kick myself. I mean, I'm not throwing stones at anyone, trust me. But when even thinking about men, our Jill Biden was over in Kenya, I guess, pushing contraception and abortion.
And he's Catholic.
And well, supposedly she's Presbyterian. I don't know, but yeah, whatever. But regardless,
this is Joe Biden or his wife.
Jill Biden.
Oh, I didn't know she wasn't Catholic. No,
not that I'm aware. But at any rate, the bottom line is none of these women, even the atheists, are holding the men accountable. Because you talk about waste, there's a waste there too.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
they don't care where their seed spills as long as it's not making a baby most of the time, a lot of time. So this is all goes into, again, that theology of the body, which has to be integrated into Catholic education, that you're teaching not only Catholicism, but the whole person.
Yeah.
Body, mind, soul, spirit, the whole person. And you have to reach each area of that in educating them. Educating them for what are they going to do with their hands, what are they going to do with their eyes, their ears, their mouth, whatever. It's a whole body thing too. How do they dignify themselves if they're female? How do they dignify themselves if they're male? I think we leave the men out a lot of times. That has anyone ever heard self-control? We don't want to talk about self-control anymore. We don't want to talk about virtue. We don't want to talk about sacrifice.
No.
And that those are, that takes away from what I want at this moment. But we need to start expecting more of males too, because a lot of women find themselves entrapped in, and especially in impoverished countries like Africa and India, where women don't even have the power. So now, what are you offering them? Death. Turning to the male and saying, you've got a responsibility here to just be loving, which is right to many of their cultures, but build up that culture a little bit. That's why we used to evangelize Catholicism. Now we don't do that anymore.
Well, part of the problem with telling them that they should step up to the plate and love is because so many of them get women pregnant that they are not married to because they're already married. And so they feel trapped. And, of course, they really trap themselves. I mean, they say, I'm sorry, you ran into the trap. It's not my fault. But that's where the problem lies. So again, that's where,
raising both the sensitivity of young boys to also who they are as children. Matrimony, holy matrimony.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is that we have the whole deal here in the Catholic world. I'm not going to say we always use it well, but as a convert, I mean, I thought it's like, okay, I'm going to go to Mass. I'm going to learn about Jesus. I'm going to, it's not just faith. It's a whole lifestyle. And, that lifestyle is something that the secular world hates. And I don't think that most Catholics even realize it's a lifestyle. If you have that lifestyle, if the religion means that much to you, that you change your life and you live the particular way that you have been told you should live, And it's not like it's hard to do, that, it's not like you're never going to be able to watch a TV show or something, I mean, it's like people just have this idea that it's too rigorous, it's too Catholic, it's too, too conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when conservative became a bad word. There's nothing wrong with trying to do the right thing, whether you're liberal or conservative, as long as you know the facts and interpret them appropriately.
And that's interesting that you should bring that up, because even in government, when we talk about,
oh yeah,
and people will say, well, I guess you're a conservative Catholic. And I go, you know what? I said, don't put a political label on me.
No.
I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
My ideas maybe come across as conservative politically, yes, but that's not who I am. I'm a Catholic. I pray and I hope and I work towards being an authentic Catholic.
Yes.
And I remember one interview many years ago I had for a Catholic school, and the question was posed to me: do you consider yourself liberal or conservative? And I said, please don't put me in a box.
Yeah.
Because there's some things I might say that you're going to say, she's a little liberal, But I said, if I'm being an authentic Catholic, however that comes out in how I act and so forth, even politically, so be it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good point, because it's one thing to live the faith to the best of your ability. Now, as things go on in the public sphere, some things I'm liberal on, some things I'm conservative on. I don't like to put myself in one or the other. If you ask me if I'm, if as a Catholic, I mean, I buy all the rules and I try to live by them. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of rules. Sometimes I do something wrong, but it's not on purpose. But yeah, so I mean, there are things that I would consider myself liberal on. The equality of all people. I am appalled by how white Americans use African Americans and Hispanics. If they look Hispanic, immigrants, it's like, this is a country made up of immigrants and made up of a whole bunch of different kind of people. And you know what? We all have a body and soul. We are all, we're all human beings. We're all persons. So I'm very much into that equality thing, not from some weird political viewpoint, but it's like, the things that happen to some people, that just because they're Black or just because they're, I don't know what, an immigrant. And it's like, what makes you think this is right? Mm-hmm. So that sort of thing I'm very liberal on. But,
and I think that, even when you're teaching children about government, when you get into issues like that, and well, even taking, for example, CRT, the critical race theory. My opposition to that is not based on the premise of denying racism. That is still here. I lived it. I've been, I taught at an at-risk school for 12 years. I'm very well aware of racism in our society. But it depends on how you teach that. And United 1776 is one organization I support by, I think he's a doctor, Dr. Woodson. He worked with Martin Luther King Jr. And a few others. You have to teach the truth. Yes. But it depends on how you teach it. If it's going to be from a false perspective or something where you're going to exaggerate one thing over another, or that's not serving anyone any good. And even talking about the immigrants, I have met some wonderful, holy immigrants. But again, the whole issue of immigration is that there needs to be just and orderly immigration. Yes. Okay. So, and I go back to St. Thomas Aquinas on that, because he wrote beautifully the treatise on immigration. That, you need to have that in an orderly fashion. And I've joked at times, though, that, there are some Americans, if they left, that's fine. I'll take them and I'll take the immigrant, depending on what American it is. So,
I love it.
So, but I think you have to balance things too. And I think you have to do it in a just way. And if it's done from bitterness or anger and rage, we're never going to get to that point where we hope to reach.
Yeah,
you have to teach the truth.
Yeah, you do. You have to teach the truth. But, the first truth that we all need to learn when we're talking about human beings is whether somebody is disabled, old, white, not white, an immigrant, or a U.S. citizen forever born here. No matter what, we're all equal. And we just can't buy into that. We just don't buy into that. It might be because more people in another group don't have as much education. And so you label them as stupid. So that's the sort of stuff where I am a raging liberal, because it's like it drives me out of my mind to see people who could make something of themselves and want to being blocked. And there's still a lot of that.
Yes, there is
still a lot of that
out there. There is a lot of it. And unfortunately, what's happened in our society the last few years has only fueled that. I'm not sure it's really tamped it down. And hopefully and prayerfully, again, going back to that education of the whole child, that's when you bring in things in the school that deliberately one of my favorite authors is Dr. Seuss.
Yeah, mine too.
Sneetches, you remember the Sneetches with the stars on their bellies? Okay.
Yeah.
He was a tremendous social scientist. He understood human nature.
Yeah.
And it was a terrific lesson, because you can say, okay, now you're the privileged one. No, you're not, and you can go back and forth forever. And there's only somebody in the background that's making all the money on it while you're trying to do this. So it's going to take a lot of people to just kind of tamp it down and move it forward. And, and all you can do is pray,
Yeah. What you can do is pray and live according to your faith as the best you can.
Yeah. And teach, teachers.
Yeah. Well, that is part of the faith too.
And I'm really praying for more healthy Catholic teachers. I'm also, to be honest with you, I'd love to see more parishes and archdioceses step up and decide that they're going to start funding solid Catholic schools again, even if it's they take care of the teachers, through special funds, your second collections, whatever.
Yeah.
That's the biggest piece of almost any school budget is in your personnel. So we need, and maybe having teachers who are retired who can put in a half a day or something, or take lesser, because a lot of the younger teachers, and we want male teachers too, they're raising families. They have to have a certain income. So it's kind of everyone, grandma and grandpas, I'm going to be, I know it's hard to believe, I'm going to be 73 next month.
Oh, we both are. I'm going to, on March 22nd, I'll be 73.
April.
You look better than me.
Well, you are a little older than me. A little bit. See what a month does to you.
At this age, I can tell you what a week does to you.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's going to take a lot of effort, and it's never going. This world, that's the other thing. We live in a temporal world. At some point, we've got to just say, okay, we can do so much. We're here for this time. We're all trying to let's get there with God for all eternity, and let's help each other get there. Yeah, and in a virtuous way. And that's the other thing too, is that you can be poor and be selfish. You can be rich, you can be generous. So the idea of cultivating that desirability for a virtuous life in the context of education, and whether it's on the playground or it's in the classroom or wherever, the lunchroom, and at home, to encourage it at home, is vital. to a good
Mm-hmm.
child
Mm-hmm.
and the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, maybe we think so much alike because we're almost the same age.
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Well, yeah, wisdom, but we've also lived
And
through a very,
experience. I was going to say,
we've lived
experience.
through a very interesting,
Yeah.
very interesting period
Yeah.
in the United States.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You know, so, I mean, I remember the 50s where it was things like howdy doody, you know, and
Well, I remember Donna Reed and Leave It to Beaver.
oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
those are my favorite
Yeah.
shows. And
Yeah. And then the 60s came and everything went to Hades.
yeah. and I was, you know, I have to say, you know, I went along with some of it, and I wasn't
Oh, yeah, so did I.
the solution. I was part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to play catch up. So, but that's
Yeah. The 60s really were, the 60s were really, and I mean, I think a lot more even in the 70s. I do think what the 60s did, it woke people up to some of the injustices and inequalities in this country. So, I mean, if you only deal with other people of your type, then, you know, you think, oh, gee, everything's okay. But
that's true, except I think media had a big play in that, because if you go back even 150 years ago, to the mid 1800s, maybe even earlier, you will find a lot of threads in history that were starting to percolate.
Okay.
With women, Victoria Woodhull, who ran for president, the free love movement. And of course, towards the late 1800s and early 1900s, you had the eugenics, and you had Margaret Sanger, and you had all of that going forward.
Yeah.
You had the undergrowth there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of popped, I think, in the 60s, because technology popped.
Yeah.
And started to hear more. You had people with a voice, had a greater audience, across globally even. And of course, then you had the incidences, the sad ones, like the assassination of Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and all of this, I think, kind of worked together to, excuse the expression, fertilize the grounds for all of this, the dissatisfaction and the anger and the rage and so forth. So yeah, and then you had movements to like equality on campuses, and did have minorities starting to show up on campuses, but there was still, because some of the underlying factors were not very well addressed, and people were just being kind of put together, you know, together. They weren't prepared for it.
No.
And so then you had the clashes, and you had the misunderstandings, and yeah, there was a lot of build up, and I think it just kind of exploded. And we're looking at the mess now. We're looking at the fallout.
Yeah. Well, nothing is impossible with God.
No, nothing is. And, you know, I figure it's God's will and his time, his way. I don't understand it, but
maybe we could petition him to hurry up a little bit. Just kidding.
Well, I will say that. Yeah, I will say this, because I wrote my own memoir, Third Millennium Woman. It was kind of autobiographical, but in part of it, I did mention the fact that, you know, even while I was before I came back to the faith, I said, if God had listened to all those people saying, "Come, Jesus, please come now," you know, I'd be in hell. You know, so God waited for me, and I do pray that he waits for everyone possible who will return to him, and only he knows that exact tipping point, you know, in his perfect knowledge, where it's like, okay, this is the cutoff. Only he knows that. But I do pray for everyone around me that, like I was graced and blessed to be able to return to the faith and prayerfully be saved. That is for everyone. All my friends, even strangers, even people I believe is really hurting other people
Yeah.
This life is short. Let's just pray for everyone's eternity with God.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate to find the faith.
Well, someone was praying for you. Well, it could have been, people. God knew that you were going to respond. And he knew exactly when to reach out to you for that response and with whom. Like you said, you could have gone to someone who may have misled you. He made sure that it was the right time, the right place, the right person.
Yeah. Well, that priest, I'll tell you, he was something. He he was so funny because he would give, there's this little book, Life, and I think it's the Life with Jesus or Life with Jesus Christ. It was the book that I was given this thick. And he said, well, we'll use this as the textbook. And I'm like, really? I'm like, there was a lot more to Catholicism. So anyway, he started to give me books. And he said, well, you might be interested in this. So, you read this. And I did. And we met for the better part of a year every Saturday morning. In fact, when I'd knock on the door, the housekeeper would open the door and she'd look at me and she'd say something like, "You're having trouble getting this, aren't you, dear?" It's like, oh boy. But yeah, so in the end, this man really just changed my life, because he said, you're more interested than most people that convert. And he said, I think what you should do is you should go to this little college that I used to teach at, Holy Apostles College and Seminary. And he said, they just happened to send me a registration form because I used to teach there. So he gave it to me and he said, you should go, just, see if you can do that. So I went home and I asked my husband, who was a devout Catholic. And he sent me to, he said, yeah, sure, no problem. So I went down, and the course in the summer met Monday and Wednesday. And I used to hate the Wednesday class because I knew I had to wait until the following Monday to learn more about Christ. And I thought, wow. So, of course, at that point, I was Catholic. I had converted. So I studied there for 90 credits. I became somewhat friendly with the rector. I mean, he started, I think, the year before I did as the rector when I came in as a student. So in a way, we kind of grew up in that Holy Apostles atmosphere. And then he said to me one day, almost the exact same words, you're more interested in this than most people. So I think that you should go to Dominican House of Studies and get a license to teach an STL, and then you come back and I'll hire you. So I went home and told my husband, who by that time was disabled, and he said, well, and he was so devout. He said, I can sit in the living room in the house and watch TV, or I can sit in the living room in the camper and watch TV. So we lived in a camper right outside of Washington in Maryland, College Park. And I got the license to teach and he hired me. And I look over my life. You probably have the same result. I look back over my life, which really started, I converted in 1989. So my life really kind of started the way it is now in 1988. But, I can't imagine. I couldn't have imagined before that. I was involved with the academic formation of over 200 men that are priests now. I can't even count the number of lay people and religious that I've taught. And it's like, how did that happen? Really, I sit sometimes and I say, how did this happen? I went from absolutely not anti-Catholic, but I had no interest in it, to being devout and bringing other people through so that they'd know enough theology that they could go and do something good for people. And it's like, how did that ever happen? And the only answer I've got is God. It's amazing.
Well, it's interesting because you mentioned that your husband was devout, and I have
Yeah.
to believe he prayed for you.
Oh, he probably did. I'm sure he did. He probably prayed to God saying, would you please turn her Catholic before I have to slap her silly?
I called in St. Joseph, Mary, all the saints, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. He probably called on St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. That's why you became an educator. Yeah, he probably, because I know, when you see loved ones,
yeah,
and you know they're good people, you're just sitting there going, and when good people, I'm not saying like I judge people.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You just want them to become closer to God. You just want that desire for them. And so, yeah, you're praying. And, I have a son who's in a difficult situation right now. Most people know what it is, but one of his friends came down for his birthday, and we were at a restaurant, and she has her own issues in the area of sexual identity and so forth. And she was talking about the time she was at our house in Nevada, and she looks at David and she goes, yeah, your mom was at church, I think, when I was over there. And I said, I'm David's mother. I'm always at church. It just, and it's kind of like a joke, but I pray for everyone because I think there's a lot of woundedness.
Oh, yeah.
There too. A lot of people are so wounded. And I even see it in women, outside of abortion facilities. I call them inside out porcupines. They're in such internal pain.
Yeah.
That they're screaming, they're yelling, they're making noise, whatever. They're in that such internal pain. And they don't even recognize it themselves. But they are wounded. A lot of them are wounded. And some of them have been physically wounded. Sexually wounded. Of course. And all you can do is just pray, and you just, God will touch them. I believe that. I believe God, if anyone even has a sliver of desire for him, he will. That's where the Divine Mercy Chaplet comes in. I'm a devotee of Divine Mercy Chaplet. That even one prayer will save a soul. Just one, plea, one bead will save a soul. And I believe that I'm responsible in a sense that God expects that of me. He expects me to. I gave you this gift. I gave you your faith. Now step up. You've got 5 minutes here. You got 10 minutes here. What are you watching that silly show on TV for? Yeah. And he's going to have an accounting for me. He's going to hold me more accountable, I think, than even some of the wounded. Because he has blessed me, he has graced me. I bet you and I could sit down and talk about stories of grace and blessings quite a bit. But yes, he absolutely, and he's brought people in my life that are just phenomenal. And I'll go, wow, I didn't expect that. And there's that person.
Yeah.
Just another way of looking at the faith or learning about the faith. So, yeah, that's.
Well, we have a lot in common.
I think so. Besides our age.
And that we're both memoir writers.
Yes, memoir writers, yes.
And we're Catholic.
Yes, we're Catholic. I pray so. Well, I've also said to God, as long as I'm faithful, you want to call it. Yeah. But yeah, I always pray to also, it's funny that you said, Dr. Sebastian says, I pray I decrease while you increase. I hope we all increase.
Yeah,
I am weight,
he was referring to my weight.
Oh, good grief. Yeah.
That's why.
But yeah, I am looking forward to, and to be honest with you, this work, I've shared with other people. I had a very good friend of mine out of Denver edit it. She's done a lot with classical education out there. But if everyone, like I said, could come together and just kind of have those same common goals, and let's just
Mhm.
move this forward. That's all I
Yeah.
care. Move
Yeah.
it forward. And, with my writing too, my general philosophy on it, or my general look at it, is that if there's anything good in it, it came from God.
Mhm.
And if there's anything that shouldn't be in there or it's wrong, I don't want my name on it.
Mhm.
So hopefully God is using me in the right way, and he'll figure out what he wants to do or not.
Mhm.
It's in his hands.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, this has been a real fun interview.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I think we're two peas in a pod here. It's kind of scary.
And
We
some
could
people are out there
recap
going,
it
close
together.
that pot up and put it away. No.
Yeah, we could wreak havoc if we got together. I think we have the same sense of humor too. That's really frightening, because I see that we're both
Yeah, I'm
laughing at
sorry.
the same
Yeah, I'm
time.
sorry about that. Yeah. I don't know if it's the Irish in me. Of course, I'm Irish Jewish, which is a Molotov cocktail, I tell people. And then what do? I married a man whose mother was Irish and his father was Jewish.
Oh my.
But my dad converted before he married my mom.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been an interesting life. That's all I can say.
Mhm. Indeed. Indeed it has. Yep. So, well, I think we have just about run out of time. So, is there anything in particular you'd like to emphasize before we go?
Yeah, I am going to be looking at probably putting out the word on the work for anyone that's interested, whether it's a school, archdiocese. I have a couple of friends too. I'm going to send some blurbs to just keep those conversations going. I'm available to talk to anyone, either by Zoom or in person, about what is in the content of the book. It's like any work, it's not going to be the whole enchilada, but hopefully it is comprehensive enough. One of the things I did learn doing this book is there's a plethora of movement, if you will, in programs, books, magazines, spokespersons, all kind of traveling the same road, trying to reach that same end, where education of our children, or even our adults, because our parents need it too. Our parents need education. They all have that understanding of that need. And they're coming out, and they are just moving forward to I think Father Peter Stravinskas is one.
Oh yes, I work with him.
Yes, I know. And so yeah, he saw it. I tried to get Ave Maria aboard, but they had a couple other projects they were working on. The Catholic universities, yes, absolutely. Make sure we have strong administrators too.
Yeah.
But also the teachers. And it may be an inroad for someone who has homeschooled and they have a degree, and then this is a master's that gets them into a Catholic education.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, if there's anything I can ever do to help, let me know.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I do want to get your book though. I'm a big reader. That's all I do is read. That maybe
everyone who's read that book has said it's brutal. It's brutally honest. It's brutally frank. It's raw. It's really bad.
Well,
yeah, I mean the what I went through was not good.
I'm sometimes you have to look at the wound. We're not, I was going to be a nurse at one time, but then in my first year of college, I realized I didn't like the sight of blood.
Oh dear.
I don't think I'm going to make a good
wrong profession.
Yeah. That was, of course, during the age where you became a nurse or a teacher. But part of it is we have to be willing to look at the wounds. Like the Good Samaritan on the road, that he to the fallen person that no one wanted to touch,
Right.
we have to be willing to look at it and help heal it, because you don't know it unless we don't want to hear. A lot of times we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear someone's story, but stories are powerful. Stories are far more powerful than all the theological books or the historical documentaries or whatever. Those personal stories. One of my neighbors, her mother-in-law was a Holocaust survivor who wrote 3 books. Her name was Sender. I think it was Ruth Sender. Very powerful books, actually even geared to middle school and high, even though to read it was very difficult, but it wasn't graphic. But it was powerful enough to even reach a middle schooler. The woman's approaching 100 now. You know, she survived it all. And when you read hers, you talk about being raw. It was raw. So, we can't appreciate unless we know. So that's the way I see things.
Oh, it was not easy to write, but
was it?
I felt like I think to some extent it was, in the sense, not that it was healing me as much as it was hopefully accomplishing. The reason I wrote the book, I know this is going to sound crazy. The reason I wrote that book was that I was hoping that at least one baby that was going to be aborted would be saved. Just one will make me happy. I mean, I'd be happier if it was 1 million, of course, but even if just one. And the image that comes to me when I talk about, it's not just that you're killing a person and taking away their whole life. The other part of it is, if you look at a genealogy chart and you've got 2 people up here in like 1800 and they have kids and those kids marry. And so what happens is you usually have this like triangle. Well, consider if one of those 2 people are killed before they're born, and the triangle doesn't come into being, although the person who didn't, the spouse, if that spouse marries somebody else, the population may be as big, but the population will not be the same people. So to me, it's such a heartbreaking thing, because you not only kill the baby and pretty much destroy the woman, but you also wipe out a whole line of descent. And that was so impressive to me, because, I have, between my husband and I, because my first husband died, and then my second husband died. I'm just lucky.
I'd have to know them to know that, but okay.
No, I'm not lucky. I was being sarcastic, but it was like, who ends up with 2 dead husbands? It was like, wow, that's weird. But so there were stepchildren, step-grandchildren. My second husband, Bill, he had been married to this beautiful woman, Bertha. We were friends. She died of ovarian cancer. And so, so her children, their children became my stepchildren and step-grandchildren, and now step-great-grandchildren. So it's like, I look at that and it's like, none of that would have happened to me, because I wouldn't have ever drawn breath. None of that would have ever happened to them. They would never have known me and the love I feel for them. It's sad. It
is sad. It is truly. It's like the dead fig tree. I mean, it's dead. The branch is dead. And,
and for nothing. That's the thing. It's one thing if a bunch of men go running into war, or a fireman runs into a building and he's trying to save somebody. People die. There's no question. We don't live forever here on earth. But to kill somebody on purpose is a terrible, terrible offense against the God of life. And, it just wipes out lines of descent. It wipes out the joy that he wants us to have in our family and friends. It's just awful.
It's a form of suicide too. because it wipes out something that is part of that person, their descendant in a way. So it's a form of self-death.
That's
In
interesting.
the pursuit,
I never thought of that.
in pursuit of what? I wouldn't even say pleasure, because I've known women, it's they just want the company. They just want the attention. They just want male, proximity, if you will. It's
so more like a companionship.
Yeah, exactly. To be desired or wanted, and they don't oftentimes even realize that they're being used, which is also pathetic. Which is why I'm really for engaging more men. Even in the latest movement, walking with moms in need. Said, why do we keep saying moms? Where's the dads? How about walking with moms and dads in need? Let's get the the men back. Yeah, we keep leaving that piece out, and it's the men have to be addressed, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully future generations, well, depending on what God plans, we don't know. I mean, I could have this book published and the end of the world comes. Because
you never know.
What timing? Somebody saying to me, well, I kept you busy. Thinking about me.
You weren't worrying about the end of the world. So.
I kept you busy thinking just about me, so it's all good.
That's funny.
Anything in his time is fine. His time, his will. Yeah.
Oh, that's something. Well, anyway, I've enjoyed this enormously. I've had a good time.
Maybe we can do it sometime even without Sebastian. Who knows?
Yeah, really. Oh, so this was, I think it was a not only a fun interview with a lot of laughs, but I think it got some very important points across, and that's important.
Okay.
So
I hope so.
Yep.
So
I certainly enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about your book and your life, and I'm hoping we can pick this up again.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next time around, I'll talk to you about my memoir.
Okay.
God did grace me. God has graced me quite a bit. Like I said, He's gifted me, and I better not waste those gifts. That's just the way it is. So.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. Well, it was great talking. Oh, prayer?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yep. Okay. Would you like to close us?
Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary,
Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Saint Joseph,
pray for us.
In the Father, and the Son, and the Spirit. Thank you.